Hey, what's going on, everybody? Akeem here, and joining me right now is Yuri Lowenthal, the voice of Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man in 2018's Spider-Man and the upcoming Insomniac game, Spider-Man 2. Yuri, how are you?
Akeem, I'm doing great. I'm here with you, so how bad could I be?
You must be very good.
I'm so excited.
Only the best sits across from me.
That's what I've heard. So,
Yes.
So thanks for that honor.
Of course, only the amazing, only the spectacular, only the sensational.
I see what you
And you're all of those.
What about Ultimate?
I don't know.
Yeah,
That's him.
Okay.
That's
Okay,
that
fair
one.
enough. Fair enough.
That's
fair
alternate.
enough.
I think a lot of people don't actually realize this about you, Yuri, is you've been the voice of Spider-Man in video games. Like it predates the Insomniac games. Like your first role, do you remember your first one?
I believe, and here,
Yeah?
I want you to fact check me on this. And
Okay.
if you don't, I'm sure the internet will. I believe my first foray as Spider-Man in a game was in Marvel Pinball.
Bullseye.
Yes. Pinball FX2 back in 2010. That was by Zen Studios.
Everything fuzzy. Must be mind-altering gas.
And it's funny because like I feel like a lot of what you brought to that character kind of like carried over to today. I mean, like also like more recently, you were the voice of Spider-Man in Midnight Suns back in 2022. How did you become like the go-to person for Spider-Man in video games?
I blame Insomniac for that.
Yeah?
They created an amazing game that people were so excited about and was so good that they just associate me with, Spider-Man in good projects. I don't just bring Insomniac's version of Spider-Man to Midnight Suns. It's a different Spider-Man because it's a different game and it's a different world, and it's a different story, and he's a different age and has different experience.
Good afternoon, Demo Venom! Here's a special request from all of New York to you.
So I wanted to make sure that I did draw a distinction, or that I have drawn distinctions in the past. I mean, I think early on, like pre-Insomniac Spider-Man, I was just excited to be Spider-Man. It was probably very much the same, and I hadn't really drawn those lines yet, but like post-Insomniac Spider-Man, it's definitely like that's its own world.
So how did let's take things back a little bit. I want to go back to 2018. Obviously, this was the Insomniac Spider-Man video game was in the works for a very long time. What was like that process, like the audition process, like when you got, whatever it was that you got to read? Did you know going in that this is for Spider-Man?
Yeah, it was a long process, and I will say though, with especially with games like these that are established, major properties, they will often try to disguise what you're auditioning for. They'll change the names, but two things generally happen there. Usually, it fails because I'm such a nerdy nerd that I see through. I'm like, oh, you know what this is? I talk to like nobody because nobody's there. When I'm reading the thing, I'm like, you know what this is? This is Star Wars.
The guy sticks to the wall. Yeah, come on.
And usually they also don't do a good job, and they'll change the names, but then in the headings, but then forget in the dialogue when they're referring to the characters.
Yeah.
And it'll be like, John says, da 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 da. And when I was talking to MJ, and I'm like, oh, come on, guys, you should have really vetted this better. But anyway.
Could have been Michael Jordan, you don't know.
That's true. Yeah. That's true. I mean, there's so many different kinds of games these days.
Yeah.
It was a long process for the first game, because when Insomniac was auditioning to get the job to do Spider-Man, they hadn't even gotten it yet. They wanted to put together a little demo, and so they called me and Brian Bloom to record a scene.
Hello, New York! New suit, same old me.
Insomniac had worked with me just before on Sunset Overdrive and some smaller stuff, smaller for me in the past. And so they knew me, so they said, hey, will you help us record this demo? And I said, sure. And I was like, oh, Spider-Man, But it was just that one-off thing. They went off and then a year later, they got the job, or at least I found out they got the job. Now for the first game, they had already gone through one Spider-Man, in that they had hired somebody, it hadn't worked out, and they went back to the drawing board. Some of my champions over at Insomniac were like, hey, in addition to all the other people that we want to see on, we want to bring Yuri in on this. And my previous work with them actually was working against me at that point, because they said, well, wasn't he just the player character in Sunset Overdrive? And they were like, yeah. They're like, well, yeah, well, Peter Parker is very different from that character. And they were like, well, he's an actor. We think he might be able to do something different than what he did in that game. And they actually had to fight for me to get thrown into the mix.
Writing your memoirs? Don't forget the hyphen between spider and man.
But you play a specific type of Spider-Man in the new game, Spider-Man 2. You're playing Peter Parker, who is now, he has control of the symbiote suit. So we're introduced to a darker, more brooding Peter Parker. How would you describe Peter Parker that we see in Spider-Man 2 compared to 2018's version?
Well, I think, you said who controls the symbiote, or the symbiote suit controls him at certain points. I think at this point that we're talking right now, that's not so much of a surprise.
Yeah.
But I think the big difference is, and I only recently made this specific distinction, the Peter, pre-symbiote Peter is 99% concerned with people other than himself. Mm-hmm. He's worried about his friends. He's worried about his family. He's worried about, every citizen in New York City, before he thinks of himself.
I'm just here to save my friend.
With the symbiote, he becomes very selfish, and all of a sudden he's thinking of himself. He's only thinking of himself. And I think that's the major distinction. And we know Peter as a very generous, kind-hearted, giving guy. And that gets taken away when the symbiote starts to, pull on his strings. And it gets worse and worse through the game. And that was something that we definitely paid a lot of attention to throughout. And especially because when you're recording a game, you're doing things out of sequence sometimes.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, okay, here, and now we're here, and now we're here. We had to sort of track where he was in that journey throughout the course of the game. And that was where Chris Zimmerman, our performance director, and members of the Insomniac team were always, there watching when we were recording to make sure we were in the right, at the right symbiote level.
We're reintroduced to two Spider-Man. Now they're on screen at the same time, and we get to play as either or.
Yeah.
I got to ask you this. This is something that I'm pretty sure a lot of fans would love to know your take as the voice of Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Who do you think would win in a fight between these two chums here, Miles or Peter?
Miles in a heartbeat.
Yeah?
you're
not going to use any of your biases of hey, I'm Peter.
I've got experience, but he's got youth and electricity.
Yes.
It's funny using Venom powers in the terms of this game because Venom is also a character.
Yeah.
He's the venomized Miles, but not venomized. Anyway, it'll become clear at some point in this game exactly how powerful Miles has become and exactly how much he's progressed. And you may even get your answer in the game as to who would win in a fight.
Oh my goodness, I'm excited. You know what? I gotta tell you this. You said the right answer. I was thinking you were gonna be you were just gonna be a Stan Lee.
Me.
You were gonna be a Stan for Peter. You see what I did there?
I did. Yeah. That was good.
Well, I'm sorry, true believers. I'm just gonna have to be Peter Parker. He would win in a fight because he's the amazing Spider-Man.
Should I tell a little Stan story from the first?
Yes,
game?
please. Yes.
Only because you did that.
Of course, yeah.
He came in to record just one little bit of dialogue for the game, and I wasn't involved in that recording session, but people on the team knew who I was and how I felt about certain things, and so I got a call saying, "Hey, you're not scheduled to come in, but I just wanted to let you know that Stan's coming to record at this time on this day. If you happen to be in the neighborhood or in the studio or lurking outside the window, we don't know how that happened." So I showed up on that day because I wanted to see him. I wanted to say hi if possible, and he was busy guy, and he finished up his thing and he was almost out the door, and Chris Zimmerman, to her credit, was like, "Hey Stan, I just wanted to, before you go, I just wanted to introduce you to this is Yuri Lowenthal. He's our Spider-Man." And if you like how I just said Spider-Man, like Matt Berry, Spider-Man. So he goes, "Oh, you're my Spider-Man. You're our Spider-Man, huh? Well, let me give you some advice on playing Spider-Man. I want you to think, how would Stan do it? And then don't do that." That was his direction for me as Spider-Man.
I love that. I love that a lot. think what I would do, and then don't do that.
Exactly.
Like, you're the
Exactly.
creator of Spider-Man. I want to do what you want us to do.
He was exactly what you would want him to be in that situation.
That's an amazing story. I love that so much.
Love seeing you two together again. You always were my favorites.